Hi guys, Mark here. Thank you very much for joining me. In today's tutorial, we're going to be making the zigzag variation of the tornado key fob. Personally, I really like this one, and I'm sure that many of you will as well. Here you can see the original tornado pattern, which has a nice looking spiral effect. The version that we're doing today is a bit different in that we change direction once in a while, getting the zigzag look. For the cordage, I'm going to be using gutted Paracord 550. 3 strands, each 5 feet long, and 1 strand 7 feet long. For the hardware, I'm going to be using some sort of a ring. Finally, scissors and a lighter are going to be used for our cutting and melting tasks. Let's begin. We set up our key fob by first tying a single box knot. Take your long cord, which is 7 feet long. Place one end through your ring. Fold your cord in half, moving the ring to the middle point. So the ring is at the center point of our first cord. We now introduce the remaining 3 cords, folding each in half, and placing the middle point next to the ring. So the first one, the second one, the third one. We now fold the 2 long ends over like this. Then weave the remaining 6 ends through the initial 2. So the first one, over under. The next 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 one, over under. The last one, over under. Then tighten up. So this is our setup. After our initial box knot, we're going to start on the tornado pattern. So here, we're going to be using a slightly modified box knot. It is done by crossing our first two ends over our previous box knot at an angle, so diagonally. Then weave the remaining 6 ends through the initial 2.
Tighten up.
Then simply repeat. In my case, I'm going to be doing a total of 4 diagonal box knots. So again, set up your first two ends at an angle, weave the remaining ends through the initial 2. Again, tighten up. I'm going to do 2 more. After 4 diagonal box knots, I'm going to switch the direction of my tornado pattern. To switch the direction, all I need to do is tie a single regular box knot. So again, like this. So the 2 long ends are parallel to one another. Then, weave the remaining ends through the initial 2. Then continue with diagonal box knots. In my case, I'm going to place another 4. Setting up our initial 2 strands at an angle, so diagonally to the previous box knot. Then weave the 6 ends through the initial 2. Continue the same way. So set up your first 2 strands at an angle to the previous box knot. Weave the remaining 6 ends through the initial 2. I'm going to place 2 more diagonal box knots for a total of 4. After 4 diagonal box knots, I'm going to continue by again switching the direction of my pattern. Tie a regular box knot. So the 2 long ends travel parallel on top of the previous box knot. Weave the other ends through the initial 2. Then continue with another 4 diagonal box knots. So at this point, you should understand how to build this zigzag pattern. So to sum up, the pattern is 4 diagonal box knots, a regular box knot which switches the direction of our pattern, then another 4 diagonal box knots, another regular one which is going to switch the direction, then another 4 diagonal box knots, and so on, up until the length of the key fob that you would like. When you reach a sufficient length for your key fob, finish it up with a stopper knot. In our case, the foot rope knot. We start by tying a counterclockwise crown knot. Take a strand, pass it counterclockwise over the next strand. The next strand passes counterclockwise over the next strand. The next strand passes counterclockwise over the next one, and so on. The last of our strands passes into the loop created by the first strand. Tighten up just a little bit. Then continue by taking one of your strands, passing it under the next strand coming out of the box knot. So under it, then up. Take the next strand and repeat. So under the next strand coming out of the box knot, then up. Do this with all of your strands. Once you do all of your strands, very lightly pull on them to tighten up the knot. Keep tightening your knot until you can't tighten it any longer. You really need this knot to be tight so it doesn't get undone when you're using your key fob. Finally, trim and melt the ends. Apply a bit of heat onto the foot rope knot as well to lock it into place. And that's our project for today. A zigzag variation of the tornado key fob. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and that I presented everything clearly enough. Thank you for joining me and see ya next time.